All right, Abigail, for our faith and culture segment this week, we're going to talk about the passing of someone that I think might be this generation's greatest comic talent, which is Norm Macdonald. And this,
Okay.
some people are going to be like, who's that? Because he's not necessarily as famous
No,
as some like a
he
Jerry
was great.
Seinfeld. But why are we talking about him in our faith and culture segment? Well, one, his death really shocked a lot of people. Apparently, he had been sick for
Mhm.
several years and didn't let anyone know. So he just sort of passed out of
Yeah.
the blue, and it really caught people's attention in the culture. And then, one thing about Norm that a lot of people found only after he died was that he was a pretty deep thinker, and for a lot of his life, he was looking for answers to the question of what happens after you die. So he had a very interesting spiritual journey where he was trying to discern, is there God? And at different points in his life, he identified as being Jewish. Ultimately, he considered himself a Christian. And you and I both read an article. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, but an article about how he really was seeking for answers to these deep questions, and he would go to church and he wouldn't really find the
Mm.
answers he was looking for. So yeah, maybe just what were your thoughts on that article and this whole conversation?
Oh man. Yeah, that article, you guys, you should read it. And it will be very challenging. I think, he is a celebrity, obviously, and was pretty famous. And so that's why such an article would be written about him. But
Right.
really, let's think about this more from the perspective of he is one of just countless people in the world who are seeking for truth, capital T, and are they missing it
Right.
because of us?
Yeah.
I think that was my big takeaway from this article, Andrew. I don't know how you kind of interpret it, especially when he was talking about his pastor versus, I think he had his kind of like a spiritual guru kind
Yeah,
of
let me
guy.
let me just read from
Okay.
the article because this is a quote from him. He says, I have a rabbi. So this is Norm Macdonald speaking. He says, I have a rabbi who I talk to a lot. He's a real scholar. My pastor doesn't know anything. I mean, anything. He's just a pleasant guy. If you ask him a direct question, he'll go, what? Didn't you hear my sermon? But his sermons always like how to be a nice fella or some nonsense. And so, here's a guy who's looking for these answers to these deeper questions, these existential questions. And what he was getting at least, and I don't think this is an indictment of all pastors or
No,
churches, but what
no.
he was getting was, here's how you be a good person as you go through life. And that's not what he was really, what he was needing to have answered. And so I think that's one of the big things that stood out to me. And you can kind of see it in the sense of, here's a guy he's a funny guy. You might think, well, he's not thinking anything serious or deep, or he's not searching for these answers, but people are. So that was one of the big takeaways from me, is that people are looking for answers, and even people that we might not on first glance think are asking these deeper questions. And we need to be pointing them to the good news about Jesus, and we need to know what those answers are so that we can share them. And it shouldn't just be, here's how to be a better person, here's how to be more successful in this life.
Yeah. And I mean, just to play the devil's advocate in this, probably poor choice of words, but is that I also know a lot of people like this who are intellectuals, and then who use maybe the stereotype of the church today, which is a watered down performer, like bumbly pastor who's just like a
Mm,
nice guy,
right.
as the excuse. When I think really most churches pastors are spending time in the, maybe not most, I just
Yeah.
know a lot. And
Right.
so I think using the stereotype as an excuse of,
Hmm.
well, that's how all Christians are, or that's it, and it's just puffy, and I'm much smarter than that, and so I can see through it. And I think
Right.
that too is like a real red flag. So I don't know, I'm just gonna throw that out there too, that I think there can also be a cynicism in the world of, you're just not giving me enough
Right.
data, you're not giving me enough facts.
Right. Yeah.
And so that too, there is an element of faith as well. I don't know if that's, I'm reading way into like one quote from a dude I didn't know.
Well, what comes to my mind as you say that is that there can be a stereotype of the popular pastor.
Yes.
And I would say that, so that's true. We want to say that, hey, this is not something that we can just apply across the board for American Christianity. But, we can also say that stereotypes are generally based on some sort of norm.
Yeah.
And so I think the big takeaway for me, just me personally, is it's cool to realize that people are looking for answers, and we need to not be afraid to give them the good stuff. Like, we don't have to sugarcoat it. We don't have to dumb it down. I mean, we want to communicate in a way that makes sense, but we need to give them the true gospel. And I have to confess, I've watched way too many Norm Macdonald videos this week on YouTube. So
he went down the rabbit hole, friend.
I did.
I hope he found it in the end. I think that was the ultimate,
I do too.
Like how I felt about the article. Just, it's always sad to hear things like that when someone passes. And so I hope he did find it. Find Jesus.
For sure.